Well, hey there, guys. I'm Axel the Beast with ZeldaDungeon.net, and today we're going to talk about, it's kind of hard to explain, because in one part of this is going to be talking about exploration and discovery in Zelda, but another part of this is going to be a little weirder, because it's going to be talking about opening chests, and also, a lot of the, more boring items in Zelda, like the shovel or the lamp oil, rope, that kind of thing. More or less, this is something I've touched on a little bit in a lot of my videos, actually. Stretching way back to some of the earliest mailbags, I think I was talking about the treasure hunting aspect of, like, Twilight Princess, for example. How I liked how it felt like there's, like, so many chests in the dungeons in Twilight Princess. There's a lot of scattered treasures, other than, like, the main chests needed to complete the dungeon. So it kind of felt like if you wanted to, you could go around and just hunt down all the treasure just for the sake of completion. And this is also increased when you get the treasure chest, or excuse me, when you get the map and compass, or particularly the compass, later in the dungeon, which happened a lot in Twilight Princess. One thing I really liked, because it made it so you didn't have something pointing out where all the chests were until way later. So either you were going to be going for all the chests before you acquired the compass, or you'd have to backtrack for them. And I just thought all this really enhanced the treasure element. And I've talked before, I think in an editorial that was posted on the news page, about how Twilight Princess did really well in the caves. They had the lantern caverns, those really big caves, but they also had a lot of the little grottos, and they basically had all these caves and stuff where you could explore and get items. And this is also present in the dungeons, particularly with the Goron mines, but plenty of the others as well. And this is kind of what I'm going to be getting into in this video, because I think that this treasure hunting, this exploration element is kind of important in Zelda, because it was in the original Legend of Zelda, because, in that game, a large number of the dungeons were not even, like, obvious cave entrances. They were, like, hidden, and you had to actually uncover them by burning bushes, things like that. And even aside from the dungeons themselves, a lot of other caves and secrets were hidden in the same way. So there was a lot of stuff to find that wasn't very easy to find. So there was this sense of discovery where you had to walk around the land and find out where all the stuff was. And because it was there, and it's kind of important. It's kind of like a basic part of the series that was there from the beginning, and it is present throughout a lot of the other games. You have some of that in A Link to the Past, finding stuff. The dungeons are not pointed out to you. Yeah, in A Link to the Past, they're definitely obvious structures. Like, you go to Misery Mire, that's the dungeon. You go to the Swamp Palace, or, you get my point. All the dungeon entrances are kind of obvious in A Link to the Past, but they're not exactly easy to find all the time. Whereas in the 3D games, a lot of the time, it's like, oh, the dungeon's here! There it is! And, you go there, and there's the freaking dungeon, and it's obvious, and you go inside, and there's not much discovery or exploration there. But I think the earlier games, and to some degree, some of the later games, have this sense of having to find the dungeon. And even aside from that, there's having to find rupees, having to find other items, there's this idea of stumbling across stuff. It's not just adventure, it's exploring. It's the explorer. It's like Indiana freaking Jones, where you dive into some cave. You have to find the cave. That's the boring part, I guess. And I don't think it's boring when it's in a video game, though, and it's action-packed. But, things like that. And I think that one of the things about Skyward Sword is it could have been really incredible if it had been like that, because it has that really dangerous, really dynamic overworld where lots of stuff is going on. It seems like that would have been one of the perfect games to do that in. They could have even had stuff like that in the sky, hidden on certain islands, kind of like the Waterfall Cave in Skyloft. But another thing I want to talk about here is the more mundane items in the series. I'm thinking of the digging stuff, you could go with the mole mitts, the magma mitts, but there's also just the shovel. And the lamp, the candle and stuff in earlier games, but the lamp in Twilight Princess is one of my favorite examples. You have these somewhat mundane items that you use for fairly basic things. I guess bombs can even count in here too, because it's like excavation. And, I think these are examples of something that really enhance that exploring element. You have these resources that you use, not so much in combat. You're not going to be using these when you're adventuring in the dungeons and fighting bosses and stuff. which is possibly why we don't see them as much, because we're a little more focused on the obvious action-packed stuff. But I think that's something we should kind of learn to look past a little more, because I think some of those more mundane items are kind of important. I think that it's... one thing I loved about Twilight Princess was the lamp oil thing. It's like you have this extra resource you gotta manage, and you gotta think about, you know, using it in the caves and where it's dark. This is particularly important in the Lantern Caverns, possibly why they put those in the game at all. I'd love to see more like the original Legend of Zelda, where some of the rooms just can't be navigated at all unless you light up your lamp. Or they're like almost impossible to navigate because it's like pitch black. Sort of like the Shadow Temple, where you needed another item to really even see what you were doing. I think that'd be a cool idea, and I'd love to have that kind of resource management again. I liked it. One thing I really liked about the Minish Cap was some of the resource management, but that was more with other bottle items, not the lamp oil. But in particular, I liked it that I think you basically start off with only 5, or maybe it was 10. I'm pretty sure it was 5 though. Like 5 bombs is your maximum capacity. Yeah, you can upgrade it, but not by a lot. And I thought that was interesting because you had to manage your demolition equipment. I thought that was a fascinating. I thought it was fascinating having that very small amount of resources there, when usually you get like 30 bombs right off the bat, or 20 or something like that. So and then the digging items, you could be using them to dig up secret passages. I mean, you had the treasure charts in the Wind Waker where you had. They spotted that you use them to find out where treasures are. Why haven't we seen something like that in the land-based Zelda games? Because, you know, isn't that the traditional thing? X marks the spot on the treasure map. Couldn't we have like really cool items and a lot of secrets to find? Some of them items, some of them maybe perhaps secret passages where you have to dig up stuff. Maybe you can find maps to find these passages. I just think that this whole exploration element is really underrated, both by the creators, because we haven't seen it a lot, and certainly not seen it to the degree that we've had in the previous games, but I also think that it's underrated by the fans, too, because I don't hear a lot of people talk about this. I mean, you talk about adventure, non-linearity, side content. I get that. That relates to this, but it's not the same thing as this specific aspect, this specific exploration and discovery element. And more specifically, the blatant treasure hunting aspect. I think this is something that's really amazing in the series, and I'd really like to see more of it. I actually think it's kind of important. But I want to know what you guys think. Is this something that you've thought about before? Am I actually nuts and people do talk about this all the time and prioritize it, and I just haven't seen it, or I'm forgetting about it, or possibly blocking it out so I can make a video that about the whole thing? Unintentionally, of course. You know, tell me in the comments, because I'm legitimately interested in this aspect of Zelda. I'd like to talk about it more. I'd like to see what people think about it more. You know, tell me if this is something you've noticed before or not, and just, yeah. Alright, guys, that's it for this time. I'll see you guys later.